Another explanation that I've seen given is that Jeremiah begins the book of the prophets in the Hebrew Bible, and that's why the quote is attributed to Jeremiah. The problem with that is I've given an example in a previous video of Matthew 21:5 quoting from Zechariah 9:9, and Matthew attributed it to the prophet and not to Jeremiah. So he doesn't have precedence for doing this, and it's also demonstrably false that Jeremiah begins the book of the prophets. Joshua does. So that's not a suitable explanation. Another explanation I've seen given is that Jeremiah was in fact the author of the passage in Zechariah that this was taken from. The problem with that is that while there is some dispute over the authorship of chapters 9 through 14 of Zechariah, because internal evidence in those chapters indicates that they were written at a much later time than the others, very few people believe that Jeremiah wrote those. And even if Jeremiah did write them, there's a great deal of the quote in Matthew that's nowhere to be found in Zechariah, and it's nowhere to be found in Jeremiah either. Another explanation I've seen given is that Mark did a similar thing in chapter 1, verses 2 through 3 of his gospel, specifically that he combined Malachi 3:1 and Isaiah 43 into a specific fulfillment of a prophecy. And because it was okay in that case, then it's also okay in this case. Even if that were okay, the prophecies quoted in the Gospel of Mark, the text actually appears in the prophets that he's quoting from. You know, more than half of what's in Matthew doesn't appear anywhere. And to try to illustrate why this method of combining different prophecies into one, why it doesn't work. Let's say that I'm writing a book about Star Wars, and there's a specific event in my Star Wars book, and I combine text from a book on Star Trek and a book on the X-Files, and I put them into my book and say that this is a fulfillment of events that were described in these other books, and then I attribute the citation only to the book on the X-Files. Would that be taken seriously? If it wouldn't be taken seriously in that case, why is it acceptable in this case? Now, after doing quite a bit of searching on this, there was one author that came to a conclusion that I see as the only viable option. And I'll link to this. He says, changes have been made in both the wording of the quotation and the sequence of its lines to attune it to the preceding narrative about the chief priest buying the potter's field with blood money. In its present form, the quotation is a typical ad hoc creation. I don't really see any other way to look at it. It's not found anywhere in the source prophets, and what little actually came from Zechariah has been taken entirely out of context, entirely, to try to shoehorn it into events being described in the gospel. If someone else has looked at this more at length and has formulated good reasons for why this was acceptable practice for the author of this gospel, I'm eager to hear from you.